How's everyone doing this evening? Right. It's a pleasure to be back with you guys again. As mentioned, my name is Charles Hunt. I was fortunate enough to grace the TEDx Charlotte stage where I gave a talk entitled What Trauma Taught Me About Resilience. So I do feel qualified to meet the theme of tonight of Super Survivor. In fact, I feel like I'm going for a super duper survivor title. I've had a fairly lengthy corporate career before I started my firm. And after years of the corporate hustle, after dealing with strategy and management, the very concrete notion of the bottom line, I feel like now in my capacity as a speaker and a trainer, I'm actually more of an artist, maybe even a chef, if you will. I'll take the natural ingredients that life hands me, the joys, the disappointments, the hurts, the pains, the setbacks. I'll go into the cupboard and mix it up with a little bit of research and a little bit of learning. Now go into the pantry and try to infuse a little bit of wisdom and humor into it, and then hopefully try to serve you a delicious meal that's nourishing and full of life lessons. Hopefully it's satisfying, and as long as I'm living, I'll continue to get those ingredients. You know, life will continue to give me joys and pains and highs and lows that hopefully I can translate into nice meals. Sometimes when you're cooking and you've thrown all of these delicious ingredients and spices together, you start to cook it and you add that heat to it and it starts smelling real good. It's like you can almost taste it. You know it's going to be delicious. If you're like me, you start doing a dance like, ooh, this is going to be good. Can't wait to it. And you'll taste it, and then you'll realize it's not quite ready yet, right? So maybe the meat needs to get cooked a little bit more thoroughly, or the sauce needs to thicken up a little bit more. But even though it smells good, it's not quite ready for human consumption just yet. Well, I'd been dealing with a really painful incident, and I had hoped it was going to be ready to cook and serve to you this evening. But I realized, because those ingredients that I was cooking with, the pain, the trauma, the sadness, the depression, I still needed a little bit more time to cook. Still needed to work through some of those feelings a little bit more. And I can't serve you raw and uncooked food. So I need to let that one simmer just a little bit before I give it to the consumer. So as I was processing some of the things that I was feeling and what happened to me, I was really angry one day, and I called a friend to vent. And my friend did something marvelous. She shared with me an excerpt from an upcoming book. And the book was entitled Live Greater, Think Better, and Love Deeper. Think Deeper and Love Better, by Reverend B.A. Jackson. And the conversation was instrumental in helping me to mine a previous experience that I had for some really, really rich jewels. You see, a few years ago, I was on a flight headed to San Diego for my cousin's wedding. It's a 5-hour flight. And I had just eaten a leftover hamburger from a trendy restaurant. And that restaurant just so happened to have been shut down about a year prior for a norovirus outbreak. And in my mind, maybe I have some food poisoning. So a few hours into the flight, my stomach starts hurting and cramping really, really bad. Really bad. Go to the lavatory, no bowel movement, no gas. So I go back to my seat, and I'm just kind of rocking like old mothers in the church. Just, stomach's killing me. The pain intensifies, so I hit the call button for the flight attendant. And the flight attendant notifies me that there was still another 2.5 hours or so within the flight. But she sees that I'm in a lot of pain, a lot of distress, so she goes over the airplane's PA system and sees if there's any medical professionals on board. We find one. They move me all the way to the back of the plane. Check my vitals. All I had was a stethoscope on board. And I pretty much had to endure the last 2 hours of the flight in absolute misery. Like, I alternated between just resting my head against the seat in front of me to physically laying across the entire row, was on the ground in kind of a praying position at one point, laid in a fetal position, like doing anything that I could to try to relieve this unreasonable pain. And that's really what it was unreasonable, right? If you bang your elbow, it's like, that's a reasonable pain. It's like you rub it and you feel better and it goes away. But this was a really unreasonable pain. It was not going away at all. So we land in San Diego, and they have paramedics waiting for me when we land. And they bring the paramedics on to get me off before they let anyone else off of the plane. Get me in the ambulance, they rush me to the hospital and start performing tests. They do an x-ray, an MRI, CT scan, and they finally diagnose the issue a few hours later. I have what's called a small bowel obstruction. What that basically means is within my small intestine, there's a blockage and nothing can get through, right? It's almost like the small intestine is acting like a bouncer, right? But instead of not letting people in, they're not letting anything out. There's an old joke between which is more important, the brain, the heart, or your butt. Your butt won. Let me tell you that right now. So they finally figured out the problem, and it requires immediate surgery. So they go in, they cut out about 1.5 feet of my small intestine, sect it back together, staple me up, and send me into recovery. So this is where the lessons from that actually begin. So immediately after I exit surgery and get into recovery, my healing process begins. As soon as surgery is over, that event is done, and something else begins in its place. I'm no longer in the event, so now the healing process has the opportunity to start. And it's not a conscious decision that I make, right? I don't tell my body, hey, red blood cells, I need you to start red blood celling a little bit more. Or, hey, skin cells, you see the scar over here? We need you to go and cover that up. Naturally, your body knows what it needs to do to start to heal itself. And you do too when you go through your adversity. That healing process starts the moment that you exit whatever adversity or trauma you face, whether it's the job loss, the breakup, the setback, whatever it is, your healing process starts immediately when that event ends. So after my surgery, I started healing immediately. And while I couldn't really feel it because I was in so much pain from having my skin cut into, but my stomach, my small intestines, what I actually went into the hospital for, that was no longer hurting me. You see, once the doctors put me under the knife, they opened me up, they cut out the bad piece, I'm delivered from the thing that was actually hurting me. What I'm actually feeling at that point is the healing process. That blockage, that problematic thing, that's gone. But it would have literally killed me if it hadn't been removed. There are some things in our lives that have to be removed in order for us to keep going, in order for us to live, in order for us to get to where we're supposed to go. Sometimes it's a painful process. Sometimes it might be a surgery. But that thing has to be removed from your life in order for you to keep going and reach whatever it is that your purpose is. So after the removal of that toxin, me recovering from the very painful process that I went through continues. And there are some really painful things that we have to have removed from our lives. There was no amount of Pepto-Bismol that I could have taken to get rid of this problem. There's no amount of water that could have flushed this system. The only thing that was going to fix the problem that I had was for me to endure this very specific process. And sometimes God will put us through some very painful situations. It might be to save us, might be to heal us, and sometimes it's to reveal himself to us. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. I can only imagine how Peter felt in that moment that he's denying the Son of God. But that had to happen in order for Jesus to reveal himself and who he was. There are times where we will need that metaphorical surgery, removing of people, removing of jobs, removing of things that are hindering us in our lives in order for us to get to where we're supposed to go. Those things might be silently killing us, silently harming us, keeping us from our potential, our purpose, our happiness, and even our joy. So I just had my stomach cut open, pretty much from my navel down to my groin. And I'm pretty sure I can actually say this because I'm in the church, but it hurt like hell. It's just intense. That's the only way that I could describe it. It was a very intense feeling, and especially since it was to my core. There are 2 areas of your body that you really, really need, and they're both surrounding your core: your stomach and your back. You need those for virtually any movement that you're going to make. And so since I had an incision to my stomach, every movement was painful. The healing itself was painful. It's the body repairing itself from a trauma. But again, the cause of the pain, the blockage, the original source of it, that's gone. Everything that I'm feeling from there on is the healing process. And there are times where I really wish I was a pastor, because when I discovered this specific truth, I wanted to shout. Because so many times we get so invested in the thing that happened to us and being attached to the thing. And the pain that you're feeling really isn't from the thing that's removed from you anymore. It's from healing and moving forward from it. The pain that you feel from losing a relationship, from losing a job, from any of those things that are silently harming you, the pain that you're feeling is the thing that's actually making you better. The thing that you're feeling is actually healing, and those are good pains to have. So the next point is that on that path to healing, sometimes you may have some setbacks. So the day after surgery, my family comes to visit me, which is great for lifting up my spirits. And they spent some time with me, and as they're getting ready to go, all my family, they're giving me the hugs, but I'm kind of, I'm fragile at this point. I just had surgery less than 24 hours ago, so they're giving me the church pats, nice, gentle hugs. Oh, feel better. Well, one of my cousins, he's a guy. He comes in and, kind of gives me some dap. Everybody knows what dap is. Kind of grab up, hey, feel better, man. So he does that, and I'm sitting up in the bed, and as he comes in, he kind of, grabs me, and he presses his elbow directly into my incision that I had just had less than 24 hours ago. And I let out almost a primal yell. And at the same time, I can hear the blood ooze and squirt. It's like, doctors come in, they, clean me up, patch me back up. Unfortunately, I developed some complications. I continued to lose blood. I ended up having to have a blood transfusion, delayed my healing and pushed it back a little bit. But after the transfusion, I was able to, little by little, start to get normal functions back. Finally able to get out of bed, take a walk, have food, and I finally was able to get released from San Diego. Flew back home immediately. 2 days later, developed more complications, and I get hospitalized again. And this time, it didn't require surgery, but are any of you familiar with the NG tube? That thing is the devil. So for those who don't know, the NG tube, it's about 2 feet of tube. You lube the thing up real good. It's like a big straw. It goes up your nose, all the way back down your throat, into your stomach. And they don't sedate you or put you to sleep when this happens. I tell you, I just as soon die than have this procedure happen again. But they put the NG tube in, and within a couple days, they released me from the hospital, and I'm good. Well, the lesson in that is that the thing that you're supposed to be delivered from sometimes may flare up again. There are some things that once we go through them, we think they're behind us, and they may come back. That thing that you experienced, that sadness, that despair, that depression, that anxiety, it may flare itself up again. But those setbacks are vital to your path to healing just the same. So part of the reason that healing continued for me, and I ultimately did get to the point where I was better, was I had professional help. I had doctors that told me, hey, here are the things that you need to do to get better. You need to eat a certain way. Take it easy on your body. My stomach wasn't ready for solid foods. I couldn't just go from eating Jell-O and applesauce for lunch and then, hey, I'm going to have a steak later. I couldn't just immediately leave the hospital and start running up and down the hoop court, exerting myself. And the lesson in that is that there are times where we have to commit to our healing process. And commitment to your healing process is a consistent thing. If after I just got out of the hospital, I decide to try to eat a steak, my body isn't ready to process that, and I undo everything that I've already started. Committing to your healing means once you make a decision, you commit to it, and you continue in that path, you continue on that direction. There's some days where I can be like really, really upset about something and really, really hurt about something. I want to go and tell somebody about themselves, or I want to go and do something. But a friend of mine told me something once. And he told me, he said, you've got to remember the man that you want to be and commit to being that person, regardless of how you feel. But remember that just because you say who you are doesn't mean that you're not going to get tested on who you're not. So I make it through the setbacks, I make it through the surgery, I get a solid distance away from the surgery, the blockage that was problematic and painful, that was removed. When the surgery first happened, my stomach was very, very sensitive. Like even just looking at it seemed like it caused pain. It was a very ugly scar. In fact, I still have it. It used to be, again, very, very sensitive, very, very painful. But now, and this is really one of my favorite points about pain and about trauma and about scars, about adversity that you go through. Now, when I touch this scar, I feel it, I see it, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt at all. I feel it, but it doesn't hurt. That thing that was unbearable, one of the worst pains that I've ever experienced, is dissolved into an afterthought. So God will sometimes need to painfully remove the unnecessary stuff from our lives, some people from our lives. And it may hurt. It may shut you down for a while. But your healing begins immediately after that removal. Some things you just simply have to go through. And it's up to you, really, to find the purpose in your trials and your adversity. What is it that God is telling you? What is it that God is trying to do within your life through those situations? You may have setbacks on that path, but you have to commit to your healing. In due time, you'll find that your scar, while it may never go away, it won't hurt you nearly as much as it once did either. God bless you all, and thank you guys for having me.